afternoon, everyone. We're delighted to have you here today. And we're especially delighted to have our friend Len Campanaro back with us. Len is so amazing and knowledgeable. And earlier today I was thinking we should have asked Len if he put together a book for us out of his presentations because it's amazing. Maybe he could still ask. Anyway, let's be nice to Len because we want him to come more often. Take it away, Len.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it's great to see you all again. We're not talking about cheetahs, but for those of you who hadn't seen something in the paper, the zoo recently had 5 cheetah cubs born there. So a first-time mom and dad. And I thought I'd bring a picture, and you can see the cuties. They're not on exhibit yet. Their mom's still keeping them very close. The vets haven't even been able to find out what sexes they are. So probably another month to 2 months before we see them out. But the baby elephant is out. So this is where we're going today. Okay, we're going to Madagascar. And what you're looking at are baobab trees in Madagascar. And because the climate is crazy in Madagascar, they have rainy seasons, wet seasons, they have some seasons it rains all the time, and some places it doesn't rain at all. But where these trees are, they get a rather enormous swollen trunk from storing up water for the dry season. And that's what you're seeing. They're beautiful trees. We don't have any yet. The St. Louis Zoo, but you can find them in San Diego Zoo. Okay, today we're going to get intimate with lemurs and fossa. Now, before we start talking about the animals, let's talk about a very unusual place, and that's Madagascar. And it's considered one of the world's top 10 biodiversity hotspots because of a lot of the unique animals and plants there. Madagascar was actually named by Marco Polo, and he was mispronouncing the name of Mogadishu, Somalia, and confused it with that, and mispronounced it as Madagascar, and that's how the island got its name. But the island was actually formed, as I have up here, about 180 million years ago, when India and Africa, as a supercontinent, drifted apart as the Earth was evolving, and left this chunk of land out in the Indian Ocean. Now, being where it is, it has quite a variety of climates depending on where and what side of the island you're on. You can have the tropics, you can have a temperate area, you can have really arid deserts. The driest portions of the island only get about 16 inches of rain a year, and the wettest will get over 20 feet. The ecosystem varies from lush rainforests to dry, spiny forests to deserts. And why I point all this out is this has had an effect on the species of lemurs that we're going to talk about. Now, there's some 10,000 unique plants to Madagascar you will find on no other place in the world. And there's some 600 unique animals that are native to Madagascar, 700 that are unique to Madagascar you will find no other place in the world. And we're going to meet 100 of them today, out of that 700. So if you think back a year or so, when I introduced you to primates and we talked about apes, I talked about, if you think about a ladder, and at the top of the ladder, as far as intelligence and ability, are apes. And if you come down a rung, you had monkeys. And you come down another rung and you had tarsiers, which is there's only a handful of them, about 8 different species I mentioned, and they're nocturnal, and most zoos don't have them, and they're very small. And then at the bottom rung, you have a grouping of animals called prosimians, which means pre-monkey. And in that grouping of animals, you have basically 3 large families, lars and bush babies. which are found in Africa. And then you have lemurs. Lemurs are only found on Madagascar. And 99 species of lemurs remain with us today, and they make up about 20% of all primates in the world. And to try to just give you a little idea, there's 8 different species I put up on the side screen there. You can see they look quite varied. And a lot of that has to do with the environments they live in and adaptation to those environments. Now, the word lemur comes from the Latin. The Romans gave the animal the name, and it means ghost. And the Romans considered these as ghosts because of the way they would sunbathe. And we have up there, in the top picture, a ring-tailed lemur. And they love to sunbathe, and they look like Buddhas or so with their hands out, and it looks like they're praying to the gods. And that's what the Romans thought, that they were the deceased ancestors, the Romans' deceased ancestors that had come back, and so they called them ghosts because they had that eerie look to them. I said 99 species remain with us today. 17 species have gone extinct. And the extinction began when humans first arrived on Madagascar about 2,000 years ago. In fact, all lemurs that weigh more than 20 pounds, they're the ones that are extinct. And based on the bone structures that conservationists have discovered, they found that some species of lemurs were as big as gorillas, 400 pounds. That would be the size of one of the adult male gorillas at the St. Louis Zoo. So you'll basically find them scattered around Madagascar for the most portion apart in the pinkish areas that you see on the map in front of you. Scientists believe that lemurs originated in Africa and that they floated across on storm debris, the early ancestral species of lemurs, over to Madagascar, and evolved independently from apes and monkeys. And in fact, the lemurs are the only non-human primates that you can find in Madagascar. Now, the area of Madagascar has many different climates, as I've mentioned before. The eastern side of the island, all through here, getting the winds and the rains in off of the Indian Ocean, is quite hot and humid, and you've got a lot of rainforest. You get up into the western portion of the country, and they basically have dry winters and wet summers. And then along the south, down through this area, tends to get extremely dry, and they have really no wet season. In the middle of the island, the central plateau and the mountainous regions, you'll find temperate temperatures. So with all of that, you're going to hear me say these words repeatedly today. It varies by species, because animals adapt to their environment and what they need to do to survive. Lemurs have evolved rather uniquely, to adapt to the crazy and harsh seasonal climates of Madagascar. And I've given you a picture up there of blue-eyed blacks. For a long time, scientists actually thought that these were two different species, and then one day one of them realized, how come this species of monkeys or lemurs only are black, and how come this species are only this sort of orange color? And it turns out they're the same species, okay? The females are all the orange color, the males are all the black color. Unique, interesting thing about this species, called the blue-eyed blacks, these are the only primates other than human beings that have blue eyes. Okay, each lemur species has its own unique habitat requirements. Some of them like tall trees, some of them like mangroves. You'll find them in limestone spirals. You'll find them in bamboo forests, in scrub pines. The two species that are very versatile, can live just about anywhere, are the center picture, the corner picture, and the ringtail, which is the center picture. To give you an idea of what some of these habitats look like, I've got 5 shots from different parts of the country, and you can see that's, quite a variety of different climates that these animals survive in. Now I'm going to go through some notable physical characteristics. As I get through a lot of the generalities about lemurs, we're going to talk then about the lemurs at the St. Louis Zoo. So their weight ranges dramatically from the mouse lemur, which is in the upper right corner, weighing only about an ounce, to the largest remaining, the larger lemurs, the indiri, which weigh about 20 pounds. What you'll find with lemurs, females and males are the same size. In some species of animals, monkeys and such, apes, the males are larger, but in lemurs, males and females are the same size. Now, they mainly rely on their sense of smell. They have a wet nose like a dog, and a wet nose helps you grab molecules of scent that are floating around in the air. So that's what they're really relying on, more so than their eyes. But their eyes are also reflective for nighttime, where some of them can just dwell completely at night. They do have thumbs, like other primates, but their thumb is not opposable, okay? It's more just helping them hold on to something that they want to eat. Their legs are longer than their arms, okay? When it comes to monkeys, monkeys' legs are either equal to their arms or their arms are longer. Humans and the great apes, all our arms are longer than our legs. But these, it's the reverse. They have the longest big toe relative to their foot. Look at the upper picture. Look at that big toe. That's huge, okay? Then also look at the fourth toe. The fourth toe and fourth finger is largest, okay? If you look at your own hand, your middle finger is the largest, and that's what you'll find on most other primates, the monkeys and apes. The middle finger is going to be the largest. So these are quite different. Now they do have nails, okay, but they have one claw. They have a claw on the second toe, and they use that for grooming themselves, okay? Other than that, monkeys, apes, all have toenails, fingernails, no claws. They have a long, bushy tail, and that's mostly for balance. It's not prehensile, they can't carry anything with it. For monkeys from, say, South America, a lot of them can carry food or tools around with them using their tails. Their fur varies. It can be soft and dense, like the woolly lemur in the upper picture there, or really coarse and shaggy, like the in the bottom right picture. Their colors vary quite a bit. Black, white, brown, buff, gray, red, stripes, and I'll show you different ones as we go through this. Usually their belly, the underside of their arms and legs are lighter than the rest of their body. For some of them, their color gives them their name. Here in the center picture here, the red ruffed. They've got, which looks like a beard around their fur, around their face, which is red. So they get their name as the red ruff. Or, I've had a ringtail up there. They get their name from the rings on their tail. And as I already showed you with the blue-eyed black, sometimes the male and the female have different colors. And I'll give you another example as we go. Their faces are round with a pointed muzzle, but they're not as flexible as a monkey or an ape. So not a lot of visual communication between each other coming from their face. They do have whiskers, and their whiskers really function as sensors. They're just like a dog or a cat. Their teeth vary by species. ranging from 18 to 36. One of the things you find fairly common are the lower incisors, as pictured here. They mostly have 6, but some species only have 4. And notice that there are gaps between the teeth, and these are called a tooth comb. And that's to help them pry food out of the bark of trees, pry seeds from fruit, induce sap to flow from trees and such. Their color vision is limited. It's not as good as other primates. They basically see blues and yellows, but they have very good night vision. The sense of smell, very important to them. Their scent glands give off different aromatic compounds as part of their communication system, and then based on the species, the scent can come from their chest, from the side of their heads, from their armpits, from their wrists, from the inside their elbows, their neck, their genitals, okay? And they use that to communicate. We'll talk about communication in a little bit, but they also use that for sting fights, as we see that going on between 2 male ring-tailed lemurs. And whoever smells the worst is the guy who's going to get the girl. That's how it turns out. So, hearing is very important to them. Their ears are almost designed like funnels. And when it comes to tasting things, they like sweet foods. Now, their diet varies by species, but it can overlap. Some are leaf eaters, called folivores, like the sportive lemur we have in the upper right there, and the Indyrus that I showed you on an earlier slide. Now, these animals, because they're eating leaves, sometimes the leaves they eat are poisonous. So they'll eliminate the poisons by eating soil, and also the soil provides extra minerals for their diet. Some are fruit eaters, frugivores, like the brown lemur here in the lower picture. And usually fruit eaters are great seed dispersers. When they're eating the fruit, they're not destroying the seed, so when they defecate, the seed is surrounded by nice, warm, moist fertilizer, and it helps the plants grow and trees to propagate. Some like to eat seeds, called granivores, and you'll find that amongst Safak and Indyrus. I'll talk about Safak a little bit more shortly. Some are like us, they're omnivores, ringtails, eyes, and the small mouse lemur up there in the top picture. They'll basically eat anything. Some mainly like to eat gum from the trees, and the forked lemur picture we have on the far right there. And then some like to eat bamboo, tough bamboo, just like a panda would. And we have them at the bottom picture. And then others are just sort of general herbivores. So animals adapt to the food that's available in their environment. When it comes to locomotion, most species of lemurs are going to walk, run, and leap using all 4 feet. They're going to, walk all 4 just like a dog would. And, we have a ringtail here to give you an example, but the brown, the rough, the eye. The Safak are kind of on the unique side, and they go through life skipping. And skipping and leaping with 2 arms outstretched for balance. And that's what you see in the upper picture. And they're really pretty, very pretty lemurs that we do have at the zoo. And they have a unique way of jumping. They're usually living up in a tree, and as you notice here, they'll tuck their knees up against their chest. And what they'll do is when they want to jump, they push backwards. They leap backwards, and halfway through the jump, they turn 180 degrees and land face forward. And it's like watching a ballet when you see that happen. They can leap 30 feet that way. They can leap further than any other lemur. Lemurs leaping off of all 4 feet can only go about 18 to 20 feet. That's it. But it's quite fun to watch them do that. And if you hang around long enough at the zoo, sometimes you get lucky. Their activity cycle varies by species, okay? Some are active only in the daytime, the diurnal, the safak, the indiri that we talked about. Some, it's just at night, the eye and the mouse lemur. Some are crepuscular, so they're active at dawn and dusk, and that's it. They're looking for camouflage there after the bamboo lemur. Some are cathimeral, which basically says that they're active both day and night, and the ringtail and the brown lemurs are like that. Some go through a daily torpor, which is basically a form of hibernation. And it's usually an animal that doesn't have a lot of good food sources where it lives. So to conserve its energy and live off the meager food that's available, their body basically doesn't quite shut down, but all the systems, you just come to go into a low, the blood pressure drops, and they go into a brief hibernation for several hours a day to save energy. And then there's others like the dwarf lemur that I have pictured here. They're what they call obligate hibernators. Again, it's a food issue. So 7 months out of the year, they're in hibernation. And by obligate hibernators, you can't wake them up. I mean, you can shake them and you'll think they're dead, but they're not. Their body has just shut down to continue to exist on the limited food. Daily activity that you'll typically find them doing, except maybe the ones that are nocturnal, they love to sunbathe and bask. They do a lot of self-grooming, a lot of scent marking. It's a way of communicating to others in either the troop that they're in or just other strangers, finding other mates. They're very, very noisy animals. When it comes to play, they like to wrestle and chase each other, and you'll see quite a bit of that at the zoo. Their affiliative behaviors are basically grooming each other and huddling together, as you see here in the bottom picture with the male and female blue-eyed blacks. And then when it comes to antagonistic behaviors, they'll chase after each other, they'll do shallow bites, they'll pull hair, and they'll slap at each other. But normally nobody's getting killed or anything like that. Behavior-wise, females are the dominant in most of the species of lemurs. And amongst different populations of the same species, you can have different social structures, and it changes based on resources. Groups can be centered around a bonded pair, or you can have multiple females, multiple males in a group. And as I said, as resources change, the group dynamics can change. Most will sleep, forage, and travel in a group, as you see right here with these ringtail lemurs. They'll usually establish a home range, and the female decides how big that range should be based on the population of the troop that she lives with. And it can vary from about 15 to 100 acres. And they'll defend that by basically stares and lunging at each other and biting, slapping, and vocalizing threats at each other. Communication, a little bit facial, but mostly body position and posture and their overall behaviors. When it comes to scents, I mentioned that they're quite aromatic, and the scents will tell what the sex of the animal is, what the reproductive status is. It'll give off if they're alarmed about something, an intruder in the area. They'll use it to mark trees, and males will sometimes mark the females that they are bonded with. It comes to vocalizing. It's usually communicating their location, advertising for a mate, distress calls, threat calls, again, territory, alarm, and so forth. And they'll also communicate with each other tactily with hugs, grooming, and biting. Now, reproduction varies quite a bit by species. Sexual maturity for mouse lemurs is shortest at about 1 year of age, where the Indiri will go to about 9 years of age. They're the largest of the remaining lemurs. They typically breed mostly in the month of April, and males will often fight over the females, as I mentioned, the stink fight that you see going on there. Females in a group all go into estrus simultaneously, and depending on the species, estrus may last just a few hours or several days, and that's it for the year. Most are promiscuous. They will mate with multiple partners in the group. Very few lemurs are monogamous, and amongst the ones that are monogamous are the mongoose lemur we have in the lower picture here, and we have those at the zoo. Gestation varies quite a bit. 50 days for that mouse lemur, but almost 6 months for the sifaka. And usually you have single births, except the the black and white ruffed, which we have at the zoo, and they can have up to 6 in a litter. Weight of the baby varies from 2/10 of an ounce to about 5.5 ounces. So even at 5.5 ounces, that's slightly bigger than a stick of butter. Okay, imagine 2/10 of an ounce. So the smaller ones tend to be with the black and white ruffs, since they have so many. Mom provides most of the baby's needs. She normally, she can take a couple different tactics. She might leave them in the nest while she forages for food. She might carry them in her mouth, because she really only has one for the most part. Or as they get a little bit older, they'll cling to mom's tummy fur or eventually onto her back. Now, I mentioned that the females all go into estrus at the same time, so they're giving birth basically about the same time, and they will alloparent each other's babies. They'll nurse each other's babies, and sometimes alloparenting leads to kidnapping in the group. And if somebody is orphaned, they always get adopted. So the young will leave their family group before the next birth cycle, which is based on the species. It's 2 to 3 years for the most part. Life expectancy also varies for these animals from 10 years to about 30. So the ones that are maturing earlier in 1 year, they're the ones that are typically going to have a shorter lifespan, about 10 years. If you mature much later, then you're going to have a longer lifespan. They do have a number of natural predators. The Fossa, who we're going to talk about, the center top picture there. Mongoose will go after small lemurs, boas and Nile crocs. They will go after lemurs as well, and you'll get hawks and owls, which are natural predators. They do have to put up with some non-native predators, and that are cats and dogs, and also humans. Humans eat them for bushmeat, and we'll talk about that a bit more. So let's talk about the lemurs we have at the zoo here. We have 4 species. We have the black and white ruffed, the cockerel sifaka, the ring-tailed, and the mongoose lemur. So the black and white ruffed are kind of funny to watch. They're found on the eastern side of the island. You see the pink areas there on the eastern side. It's basically tropical, and it's all broken up. It's really fragmented, so that really makes it hard for these animals to survive, because humans have taken so much of the forest and fragmented it. So it's hard moving around. Average life for these, roughly 19 years. You can see the weight, 6 to 10 pounds. They're primarily fruit eaters. They'll also go after seeds, and they love nectar. They have a long snout, and that then helps them become pollinators. Because when they stick their nose in a flower and they stick out that long tongue, the whiskers on their face gather up the pollen on the flower. So when they move on and go to the next plant, they're spreading the pollen to the next plant. So they're very important to helping the vegetation on the island. So they're really important not to let go extinct. And these guys are critically endangered there. Gestation is pretty short for these, just 3 months. This is where mom has up to 6, which is the largest litter of any species. They usually live in small groups, and the female is dominant. and they are one of the most vocal species of lemurs. Oh, one of the things I forgot to mention, which is funny to watch, and I've seen them do this at the zoo, they will hang upside down in a tree to eat a piece of fruit. And rather than taking their hand and bringing the fruit to their mouth, no, they just bring their mouth to the fruit and eat it hanging upside down. And I've seen them do that at the zoo. Cockerel suffolk, also critically endangered. These guys are really pretty lemurs. They live in the northwestern part of the island, and they only are found on 2 reserves set up to protect lemurs. You'll not find them outside of the wild area, and that's because of humans. Average life in a zoo is about 12 years, but nobody knows what it is in the wild. Again, medium size, about 9 pounds. They're herbivores. They'll eat, including, besides vegetation, seeds, bark, and dead wood. I talked about their ability to leap and the fact that they hop bipedally. Again, family groups, 3 to 10. Female, again, is dominant, and she chooses who her mate's going to be. The mongoose lemur, another one that's critically endangered that we have at the zoo here. Now, here we have a little bit of sexual dimorphism, and it comes in the color of their cheeks. If you look in the center picture there, the male who's higher in the picture, look at his cheeks, and he sort of has this reddish-brown cheeks, where the female has whitish cheeks. Okay, so that's how you'll tell a male from a female in this case. They live in dry forest and scrublands, also in a section of the northwestern part of the island where you see the pink there. A little bit smaller than the other 2 species we just talked about. They too are pollinators. They love to eat nectar. They works the same way as the black and white ruff. They go after fruit, flowers, and leaves. And as I mentioned, these are monogamous. At the zoo, you'll see 4 of them there. It's mom and dad and 2 offspring. They are cathemeral, so they're active both day and night. And then the last group that we have are ring-tailed, and they are endangered. And this is the most common species you see in most zoos across North America. They live in the southwest and rather southern edge of Madagascar for the most part, a little bit into the plateau area of the island towards the center. And a variety of different habitats, from deciduous forests to scrublands and spiny deserts. Average life about 17 years. They'll eat fruit, leaves, insects, small vertebrae, so they're going to be an omnivore. And they're the most terrestrial of all lemur species. And they have a nickname called the sun worshippers because you often see them posed facing the sun, sunbathing. They love to do that. When they walk, they have a rather long tail, and they walk with their tail in the air. And that's so as they're going through the bush, it's easy to follow where the leader is taking you, is to have your tail up. Again, you've got dominant female, and females, it's a matriarchal society in this case, and when they have young, the females will stay with their birth troop, and the males will leave and join another troop. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature finds that about 90 to 99 species are in trouble. 22 of them are critically endangered, 48 are endangered, and 20 are vulnerable. So in other words, their numbers are going down and soon approaching the endangered category. And the problem is that in the population of Madagascar, 70% of the people live below the poverty line. So that causes a lot of habitat loss. They cut down trees for fuel, just to cook, for creating pastures for livestock or raising crops and so forth. 90% of the forests of Madagascar are gone. They also, because they can't afford much, they also will hunt these animals for bushmeat to eat them. You've got a problem with illegal pet trade because they're really cute animals. And then there's non-native species that people have brought to the islands: cats, dogs, civets. They also suffer from climate change, less rainfall in some regions of the island than they've had typically, so there's less food to eat in the smaller forest. And the other issue is that they have a slow reproduction rate. Only typically they're having one baby every 2 to 3 years. But again, there's hope with help from all of us. The Convention on International Trade in Exotic Species, an agreement signed by about 200 nations, restricts or tries to best restrict the trade in international trade of exotic animals to better protect them. The country of Madagascar has set aside about 10% of the land as protected area for them. There's a not-for-profit group called the Madagascar Fauna and Flora Group that does conservation work across the island, does research, a lot of education to people about them, that ecotourism is better. You know, if you wind up killing them all and eating them, you're going to have nothing. You're not going to have, eventually, you're going to run out of food as well. But they can make a living off of ecotourism. And they also help lead a project for reforestation of the portions of Madagascar. AZA zoos, like the St. Louis Zoo, help provide funding and also provide animals for re-release into the wild that were born into the zoos. And we support these programs with the Madagascar Fauna and Flora Group, as well as for reforestation. So again, I ask you to support our zoo. And then the other thing that you can do, if you are not going to the zoo to support it and so forth, is know where your purchases come from. The symbol I have there at the bottom, it looks like a little tree with the initials FSC. It stands for Forest Stewardship Council. That tells you that the manufacturer who made that product is certified that they're basically not taking trees from where animals endangered, and they're not illegally harvesting trees, like going through the Amazon and just clear-cutting trees, or doing the same thing in southwest portion of Asia. And that they harvest trees sustainably, replanting trees, and doing recycling. About half the paper, whether it's toilet tissue or Kleenex or copier paper, comes that way. So if we as consumers buy from the good guys and shun the bad guys, hopefully the bad guys will stop buying and illegally harvesting trees. Okay, moving on to Fossa, which is the largest mammal carnivore of Madagascar. The actual largest carnivore of Madagascar is the Nile crocodile, okay? But we're not going to talk about them. We're going to talk about this guy, because he basically goes after a lot of lemurs. They resemble a small puma, okay? And people often think that they're either cats or dogs, and they're neither. They're their own family of animals. They have claws like cats, tails like a monkey, and ears of a weasel. Genetically, their own family of animals. They are distant relatives to mongoose. And they too floated from Africa over to the island, but about 20 million years ago, which is about 40 million years after the lemurs arrived. In mythology, they're considered by the native people of Madagascar to be fatty, which is taboo to eat them. And it's believed that they scavenge on the bodies of the dead ancestors that are buried in the forest. So that's why it's taboo to eat them. But it's all right to kill them if they're threatening your domestic livestock. Their distribution was fairly wide around the island, and you can see the pink here. But they're mainly forest dwellers. So with 90% of the forest gone, basically they're only existing in small island pockets of forest around the island. And they're absent from wherever trees have been cleared. And here's a picture. Look at this area. This is a plateau in the center area. And there's no trees. It's completely gone. And it used to be forest. Physically, 14 to maybe almost 20 pounds, 2.5-foot body length, so it looks like a good-sized dog. Females are a bit smaller. Their bodies are very slender and muscular. They're extremely good climbers. They have very muscular limbs. The head and face looks similar to a mongoose. Their hair is very dense and fine. It tends to be coarse, and the coloration is sort of a sepia or a reddish brown. They have a footprint that looks like a dog. They basically have cat-like claws that are semi-retractable. And one of the unique things about them is that their hind legs, their ankles reverse. So imagine if my hand was my foot and I can do that with my foot, okay? And that make it handy for walking backwards. And in their case, it makes it handy for running face first down a tree when you're chasing a lemur, to have that ability so that you can use those back claws as a brake. Also, with the flexibility they have, they're capable of walking underneath a branch of a tree limb. So they're very agile, they're very good at catching lemurs. They're active basically at night, but a little bit during early mornings. And they're really good both in trees and on the ground. Males do not set up an exclusive territory. They'll have a range, roughly about 35 square miles, but the females are the one that sets up a territory. And she will not share her territory with another female other than her own daughters. So, they're generally solitary, except for breeding and then mom raising the young. Sometimes you will get a few males together if they're trying to take on large prey, but otherwise the males are solitary as well. A lot of vocalizations. They yelp to call each other, purring during mating season, a loud trembling sigh when a male is calling to a female. Males and females will meow during copulation, and they have a rather hoarse, gasping inhale when they're captured. They do a lot of scent marking with their neck and chest and anal regions. It's most frequent during the breeding season. And if you irritate them, they're going to raise quite a stink. So it's like smelling a skunk. They're really good at keeping the ecosystems in the forest that they're in balance, so that one species doesn't otherwise wipe out other species. But their diet is about 50% lemurs. They'll also eat an animal called a tenrec, which is kind of unique to Madagascar. I put a picture up there so you can see what one looks like. They'll go after pigs, rodents, snakes, birds and lizards. And they also love to eat chickens, which gets them in trouble with the locals. And we see that going on here in the bottom picture. For reproduction, they have a mating trait. Up to 3 females will either use it simultaneously or in succession. And they'll use that same mating tree for years. And the tree, basically, all the males know what the tree is, so you'll wind up getting a large group of males gathered at the base of the tree, and they'll fight it out to see who's going to get to breed with the females up in the tree. And the females generally prefer the larger males. Estrus is rather short, only 2 weeks annually, but the female is polyandrous, and she'll breed with about 10 different partners. Gestation, only about 53 days, fairly short. She's going to have typically 2 to 4. I've actually, when I was in San Diego, we had a litter of 5, but they can have up to 6. They're really cute when they're young. Pups are rather small, a little bit smaller than the size of a stick of butter, 3.5 ounces. They'll stay with their moms for about 2 years. Mom's interbirth interval is about 3 years, so once her young has moved on, she's ready to start breeding again. They're matured sexually between 3 and 4, usually the females earlier than the males. And nobody knows the longevity in the wild, but in managed care, it's about 20 years. The IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, classifies them as vulnerable. It's estimated that there's less than 6,000 left in the wild. And that's based on the reserves that they're found on, that there's about 2,600 there. Their main predator is humans, and that's from deforestation, hunting them also for bushmeat, and they do contract diseases from non-native cats and dogs. Again, there's hope with help from all of us. The government of Madagascar has established 3 reserves for these animals, and they've made the extra efforts to protect lemurs also helps protect these as well. AZA zoos, like St. Louis, although we don't have these animals at St. Louis, they help fund field conservationist work and help fund education. So again, I asked you to support our zoo because while we don't have these animals, there are other animals we have here that we support in the wild. So that goes for that as well. And if you're ever wondering, the tax dollars that fund the zoo, they don't go around the world to help save animals around the world. The tax dollars that fund the zoo all stays here in St. Louis for the operation of the zoo. When you go to the zoo, when you pay for parking and you ride the carousel, or you go to a restaurant and have food, the profits from that is what funds the work of the zoo in roughly about 18 different countries around the world. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Questions? Yes, Dan.
The map seems to show Madagascar is quite close to Africa. Is there any tendency to interchange with Africa one way or the other?
In wildlife?
Yeah, wildlife.
No, not really. You really don't want to do that because when you introduce another species onto an island, oftentimes that new species can wipe out a species that's native to that island. One of my talks later on, I'll talk about the rarest animal in the St. Louis Zoo is the Guam kingfisher. And in the 1940s, towards the tail end of the Second World War, resupply ships from Australia going to the island of Guam inadvertently had brown tree snakes stowawayed on the ship. And the snakes got loose on the island. Up till then, there were no snakes on the island of Guam. The birds there didn't know how to defend themselves against snakes, and the snakes wiped out 10 of the 12 species that are native to the island of Guam. And so the Guam kingfisher, which we have here in St. Louis, went extinct on the island in 1989. But we and a few other zoos got a few for breeding, and they serve as a survival colony so the birds don't go completely extinct. I'll tell you more of that story. So there's an example, though, of an invasive species, or like I talked about here, cats or dogs. You know, the lemurs really can't defend themselves well against cats and dogs.
Does Madagascar get high wind farms, hurricanes, major windstorms?
I guess off of the Indian Ocean, but I really don't know. I would be speculating. I really don't know that. You would think coming in off the Indian Ocean, particularly the eastern side of the island.
I guess that leads into the question of natural transplanting. It doesn't happen.
Well, 600 miles is a long way to go. It's not impossible to get across 600 miles. So.
I'd like to add in here, I'm hoping that we, not the other micro, besides thanking Len again today, first of all, let's do that, which is wonderful. But I'm really hoping that we can work it out to have a tour of our St. Louis Zoo and have Len as our leader. So I think there would be no one that would be better to lead us, and I would really hope we can work that out too. Thank you once again for a great presentation.
You're welcome.
So we'll be back together in early July. July 7th is our next talk. And we're going to be talking about penguins. And in the meantime, have a happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and have a wonderful Independence Day, everyone. Thank you again.